Welcome to the IAM CX podcast. This podcast series shares information and best practices on using customer experience strategies to increase customer engagement, brand loyalty, revenue, and operational success to make business in the Caribbean a paradise driven by data. I'm Richard Dorsey, the CEO of Island Analytics and Marketing, IAM for short, and we're a Caribbean-based data and marketing consulting company here in the US Virgin Islands. I'm joined here on this podcast once again by the amazing Roger Nicholas, our Director of Customer Experience for Island Analytics and Marketing. And on this podcast series, we have Dan Gingiss, Chief Experience Officer of the Experience Maker. And if you haven't seen him on live, if you haven't seen his YouTube, you haven't seen his LinkedIn, I'll just give you a quick brief bio. Dan Gingiss is an international keynote speaker and business coach who believes that a remarkable customer experience is your best competitive advantage. His 20 plus years of his professional career has spanned multiple disciplines, including customer experience, marketing, social media, and customer service. He has held leadership positions at McDonald's. We're not going to ask him about the ice cream machine, Discover, and Humana. Dan is the author of The Experience Maker, How to Create Remarkable Experiences That Your Customers Can't Wait to Share, and Winning at Social Customer Care, How Top Brands Create Engaging Experiences on Social Media. He also co-hosts the award-winning Experience This podcast. He earned a BA in Psychology and Communications from the University of Pennsylvania and an MBA in Marketing from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. Dan is also a licensed barber, no pun intended.
Not a barber, a bartender.
A bartender, sorry, a bartender.
Nice. I see what you did there, though.
And a pinball wizard, and he once delivered a pizza to Michael Jordan. We welcome Dan Gingiss to our CX podcast. Please introduce yourself to the audience. Thank you for coming.
Richard, Roger, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to talk with both of you. I love that you called me a licensed barber. I got to use that somewhere. And in all seriousness, I actually did do a keynote at a hairstylist's convention once, which was super fun. I'm like, wow, they picked the bald guy to talk to the hairstylist. But I'm super excited. I love the Caribbean. I've been many times, and I love what you guys are doing there. So I'm happy to be a supporter and really looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks. Could you tell us just a little bit about your career journey and what attracted you to customer experience? And we'll leave out the ice cream machine about McDonald's. As much as people have.
I am happy to talk about the ice cream machines at McDonald's as much as you'd like. And yes, that was the #1 complaint in social media over and over and over again. I never quite got to why it always happened. I uncovered some mysteries. For example, just in case you're interested, the ice cream machines need to be reset in the middle of the night. And one of the things that we found was on college campuses, the kids get out of the bars after drinking and they want ice cream, and that's when the machines are being reset. So one of the things we tried to do was to get the restaurants near college campuses to reset it at a different time, so that they could be available to the drunk students. But a lot of fascinating things that you learn and see when you run social media at McDonald's. Oh my goodness, I can't unsee some of those things. But in answer to your question, I actually grew up as a marketer. I spent about 20 years in marketing. It's what my MBA is in, and it was kind of my first love. And then when I was at Discover Card, I got moved into a role that was the head of digital customer experience and social media. And the funny thing about it is, when I got moved into that role, I had zero background in either digital customer experience or in social media. So I went to the chief digital officer, who's the one that hired me, and I said, "Look, I'm honored that you want me for this role, but I don't understand. Like, why did you pick me?" And he said something to me that really changed the whole path of my career. He said, "Dan, I've been watching you in business meetings, and you are always the person with the customer hat on. You are always the person that is trying to solve a business problem through the lens of the customer." And he said this in 2012. He said, "We got to start doing that in digital." And he was absolutely right. Now, I had never known that about myself, but as soon as he said it, I was like, well, yeah, that's how I think about things.
Yeah.
And so as I got into doing digital customer experience, and I realized how, frankly, easy it was to impact the customer journey, to turn people into happier customers, to watch the customer satisfaction scores go up, and to eventually win the JD Power Award at Discover for the very first time, I was obsessed with the power of CX. And so today, what I like to joke is if I never have to do a marketing campaign again, it'll be too soon, because I would much rather have my own customers do the sales and marketing for me because they love me so much.
Mm.
Definitely, definitely.
Wow. Well, look, we're going to get into this a lot today. Ladies and gentlemen, The Experience Maker by Dan Gingiss. You must own this. But I want to start out with a question about what was I guess, the strategic gap that you found unmet that led you to writing The Experience Maker?
Roger, I find that especially as companies get bigger, customer experience is looked at as this multi-year, multi-million dollar project that has to be
Mm,
prioritized against other multi-year, multi-million dollar projects. And I think that's the wrong way to look at customer experience. I think customer experience is much more about building a culture of wanting to do right by the customer. It's about a series of little things, not one giant thing. Now,
right.
to be fair, it's a long, never-ending series. So you have to enjoy the journey. It's because there is no destination. As soon
Yeah.
as we think we have a perfect experience, our customers are going to change their expectations anyway.
Hmm.
And so I really wanted something in the space that demonstrated that CX can be fun, that CX can be attainable by any size company, and
Yeah.
that really any role in the organization, no matter what their job description is, it should really be in customer experience. They're in the customer experience business.
Hmm.
So, for example, you could be in finance and you may never talk to a customer because all you do is you're responsible for sending out the invoices. Well, there is a part of the book, and I love to talk about this on stage as well, that when we ask people for money, that's usually the awkward part of the relationship, right? So
That's
why
right.
don't we make that fun? Why don't we make that different? I was at a restaurant in San Diego, a breakfast restaurant, and kind of a diner type feel. And when the bill comes, they attach it to a fork, literally to the tines of a fork,
Uh-huh.
with a card that says "Time to fork it over," and it's like, that's awesome. And believe it or
Yeah.
not, you probably do believe it. That waiter got a huge tip from me that
Yeah,
day because he made me
absolutely.
laugh. I was happy. And so it doesn't take a lot, and that's really what I felt was missing. Is that when you look at CX as this giant thing, it just feels unattainable. It feels like too much of a mountain to climb. And it doesn't have to be. It can be very approachable. It can be fun and exciting. And everybody should have the passion for it that the three of us have.
Yeah. I like how you said that. I like especially how you highlighted for any size business because our audience is really diverse. We have a lot of entrepreneurs on here. We have people from the Caribbean who are CEOs or CFOs. We have Africa on here, Europe, Asia, the Middle East. So I'm glad you're speaking to the breadth of business experience and industry. Um, I'm a little scared that you mentioned a great way to get to separate my money from myself because now if kids watch this, they may be coming to us with forks saying fork it over. So
Yeah.
we'll figure out a way to get around that sometime soon. Richard, you had a question?
Yeah, I like how Roger said. So we do have C-suite individuals looking at us. And what are some of the conversations that you use to help them understand a customer-centric company mindset?
Mm,
Yeah, so as I said, I believe every employee is in the customer experience business. And so we have to start with laying out for employees what their jobs really are, putting it in the job description, putting it in goals. And I always look at it as two pieces. And the first is inspiration. So we've got to get people interested in CX. And like I said, I think it's fun. I think you can have passion around it. And usually when I get off stage, I've got an audience that's newly inspired. That's the
mm,
goal, right? And so then we send them back to work. Well, inspiration's one thing, but they also have to be empowered. And that's where you have to have the buy-in from leadership. So if you have an executive team that says, yes, make business decisions through the customer lens, do what you have to keep customers happy,
mm,
then employees feel empowered to go make those decisions. And what's great is when you feel inspired and empowered, you will end up with creative answers to problems. I tell a story. I actually think I told it in my first book, not in the Experience Maker, but I'll give you the gist of it right now. When I was at my first job out of college, I worked for a company that sold collectibles, so plates, dolls, figurines, that sort of thing, and it was all through the mail. This was pre-internet, so everything was direct mail. One day, it was the week of Christmas. I get a call that comes to my desk that should have gone to customer service. I was in the product management. I don't know how the call got to me, but it came to my desk. And it was this grandma, and she was distraught because she had ordered one of our products for her granddaughter for Christmas. And here it was December 22nd or 23rd, and she hadn't gotten it yet. Now, because I wasn't in customer service, I didn't have a way to bring up her account or to really help her in any way. So I just did what came naturally. I said, all right, ma'am, first of all, Christmas is not going to be ruined on my account. So let me have your name. Let me have your address. Tell me what product you ordered, and I'm going to make sure that we get one to you. I promise you that. So she gives me all the information. I hang up the phone. Okay, now I got to deliver on this promise. So I walk
Yeah.
over to our, to where all the products are. I pull the product that she wants off the shelf. I bring it over to the packaging station myself. I put in the peanuts. I wrap up the box and seal it. I bring it to the FedEx station and I send it overnight. So for delivery on a December 24th. Now, nobody told me that I could or couldn't do that. I might have broken a company rule. I
I'm
have
sure you
no
did.
idea. I'm sure it was costly to send it overnight. But you know what? We kept a customer that day and we could have lost a customer that day. So I know I did the right thing. And it was a company that encouraged that, right? That I didn't have to go ask for 17 people's permission or signatures to go
Right.
send one box overnight. And that's the kind of culture we want to have where anyone at any place in the organization can feel inspired and empowered to help a customer when it's needed.
You know, that's interesting because Roger always is a champion that HR is a very important part of CX. And I'm pretty sure to certain HR groups, you know, you've just broken all the red tape and you run around like a crazy man. But what would you say to them? How would you also encourage them on like an organizational scale to be more flexible with a CX mind frame?
So this gets to the intersection of customer experience and employee experience. You've probably heard a lot of people say happy employees equal happy customers. I think that is correct, but I look at it a little bit differently. I don't want to get too much into math here, but there's the infinity symbol, right? That just is
Right.
Yeah.
continuous. And I believe that that is the relationship between CX and EX, that they are continually feeding off of each other. So as you have happier employees, customers see that, right? You walk into a fast food restaurant. We've all had this experience where you walk up to the front counter and it looks like you're interrupting the person's otherwise pleasant day by wanting to place an order, right? Before you even taste the food, you already kind of have a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reverse is true too. When you find somebody behind the counter that's smiling and welcoming and how can I
Right.
help you, you feel good. So as our employees are happier, they project that out to customers. Now, as customers are happier and they enjoy their experience better, it makes employees' jobs easier because nobody wants to deal with unhappy customers. We all want to deal with happy customers. That makes
Right.
our job more fun. And so that's why I say it's an infinity loop because as one gets better, the other gets better and they keep feeding on each other. So to an HR team, I would say your biggest responsibility is to make sure that your employees love working here. Because if they love working here, that's going to become apparent to customers. If they don't, if there's so much red tape and they never feel like they can get anything done and they're constantly frustrated and they're overworked and underpaid, you can bet the customers are going to see that too. And that's to me where HR really can come in is with employee experience. One last thing on this, especially in today's age, and especially in a lot of the industries that I know you're really close to, the travel industry, restaurant, hospitality, they're hiring young employees, right? Brand new employees coming into the workforce. And one of the things that happens is we tell these new employees, all right, new employee, we want you to provide a great customer experience. And they say, yes, sir. but they have no idea what we're talking about. And part of the reason is because they haven't actually had a great customer experience themselves. So they don't have anything to lean back on. If they have a great employee experience, then they can say, oh, this makes me feel good. And now I understand they're asking me to make customers feel the same way. And so I can do this. There's a very direct link between EX and CX.
And very profound. Roger, those are like 3 sound bites right there. We're going to have to repeat that for our audience.
Gonna reel forever. Yep. Hey, I'm anxious. My paws are raised. I want to get into what I call the new C-suite Bible.
Sweet, I like that.
I want to get into. Yeah, I'm going to sell this.
Can we trademark that?
Yeah. Hey, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Any residuals? I'd like to share it though.
You got it.
The first quote I want to get into is, immersive doesn't have to be difficult or expensive. Can you expand on that for our audience, and maybe even with a couple examples? I know you gave a lot in the book that'll be helpful to readers, but expand on that for us, please.
Yeah, so immersive is one of the 5 steps towards creating a remarkable experience that I outline in the book. And the methodology is called WISER, because I want people to become wiser to the power of CX. And the I in WISER is being immersive. Immersive is about creating the kinds of experiences that people just feel in their bones, that they are a part of. And we can do this in a number of ways. We can appeal to people's emotions. That always works, right? Best way to someone's heart through their kids or their pets. That's always a great place to start. We're going to have the emotion there then. We can appeal to people's senses. Any of the senses, and especially if it's an unexpected sense. So there's a story in the book about a bookstore that has no overhead lighting. So the whole store is dark. And this completely changes the effect of being in a bookstore. And so it's immersive. And then also we can involve the customer. And I call this self-personalization. So the customer gets to be part of the process. They're not just receiving something from the company. They're actually part of it. One of my favorite examples of this comes from a spirits company based in the UK called Sipsmith. Now, Sipsmith brought its gin to the US about, 6-7 years ago. And one of the things that they realized really quickly was that the way that people are asked to taste a new spirit, it could be in a grocery store, it could be in a liquor store, it could be on a cruise ship, is usually in a little tiny plastic cup. And so they pour a little bit of the spirit, and then I guess we're supposed to take a shot of it, right? But if you haven't been in college in a long time, chances are that's not how you drink anymore. You're not used to doing shots. And it's generally a bad way to taste a spirit anyway, especially if you're standing in a grocery store. So what they did instead was they set up a pop-up tent at a festival that I was at in Chicago, where I live. And when you walk into this tent, there's 3 different stations. The first one has a bartender who is impeccably dressed. And he asks you, what kind of tonic would you like with your gin and tonic, with your Sipsmith gin and tonic? Now, as Richard said when we started, I am a licensed bartender, not a barber, but a bartender. And I had no idea there were different kinds of tonic. So he educated me. He said, well, there's citrus tonic, and Mediterranean tonic, and Indian tonic, and they all have different flavor profiles. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. All right, I picked one. Now, I expected him to squeeze a lime in the drink because as a bartender, I know a gin and tonic's pretty much the easiest drink in the whole bar. But instead, he sends me to the second station, which is the garnish bar. Now, it has limes, but it also has lemons and cherries and strawberries and dried rose petals and peppercorns and all of these herbs and spices and things I would have never thought of to put into a drink. But I got to pick what I put into the drink. So far, we have a really immersive experience because Dan is involved in crafting his drink. And that's really cool. I'm going to jump ahead because the S in Wiser is about being shareable. And this is about creating intentional moments where people cannot help themselves. They pull their phone out, they take a picture or a video, they share it with friends, family, or on social media, and you don't ever have to ask them. So the third station in this Sipsmith tent is what made this experience both immersive and shareable. The immersive part was Dan's part of the process and he's building his own drink.
Right.
The last station had these little note cards and little clips, and they wanted you to name your drink. So they had markers out there, right? Dan names his drink. I
Wow.
clipped the sign to my cup. And just like every other person in the tent, because I watched them, I put down my cup, I took a picture of it, I shared it to social media, and then I tried my drink. And never did Sipsmith ever have to ask me to do this. There's no sign there that says, follow us on Instagram, don't forget to tag us, blah, blah, blah. People just do it. And so what I love about all of this is a little bit more of a well thought out example than some of the others, which are really super simple. So I get that there's a lot of complexity in this example. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is pretty straightforward. They're saying the way it is today, where people taste a spirit in a little plastic cup, it's a hard way to stand out, right? Because everybody does it that way. So let's do it a different way. And then the way that they decided to do it made it fun, made it engaging, and made it something that I wanted to tell other people about.
And
Wow.
they found a way to upsell you too, because now you're not just thinking of Sipsmith, you're thinking about Sipsmith with a flavored tonic.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
So
and I can tell you, no joke, in my
you're in trouble. Huh?
Yes, and no joke. And I am not a sponsor or a representative at all of Sipsmith, but I will tell you, in my home bar, I have Sipsmith gin. They made me a customer, and I had never heard of it before. So that's the power of experience. You go, at least where I'm here in Chicago, you can go to a liquor store. There's 50 gins to choose from. How in the world does one gin stand out?
Yeah.
They did it, and they turned me into a fan.
Yeah.
Wow. So are you a loyal to that brand, or is it just something that you occasionally?
It is. I probably have 3 or 4 gins in my bar, but it is absolutely one of my favorites. And so, yes, when I run out, when the bottle runs out, I buy another one. So I guess that does mean I'm loyal.
Yeah, you're loyal. Yeah.
So you're loyal after the first shot, pun intended. But usually it says that 90 to 100 days is what it takes to win a customer's loyalty. Why is it? Does it take so long?
So oftentimes, this all depends on the business, right? I would say that applies even more so to B2B companies, but it can apply to a lot of different things. Part of it is because if you think about when somebody decides to buy, and this could be a consumer buying a product, or it could be an employee buying something for their business, a B2B purchase, maybe it's software or what have you.
Right.
One of the first things that happens, and this is very natural, is the more money we spend, the more likely we are to have buyer's remorse, right? We're just worried that we made the right or wrong decision. I just bought a new car. Oh, I hope it's the right car. I hope it isn't a lemon. I hope I didn't overspend, whatever. This is very true in the business world as well. I like to say in B2B companies that the buyer goes home to his or her significant other at night in one of 2 ways. They either go home and they say, honey, I just invested $500,000 today in a new SaaS platform, and I really hope I made the right decision, because we talked to 4 different companies and it was my job to choose which one. And if I didn't choose the right one, I'm going to get fired. Like, my job's on the line. I'm really nervous about this. I think I made the right decision, but I'm not sure. Or they go home and they say, honey, I just invested $500,000 today in a new SaaS platform at work, and this is what's going to get me promoted, because I just made the best decision of my career to invest in ABC company. And I know this because they told me that they're going to be with me every step of the way. They told me that they're going to help me get promoted. They've made these promises, and I trust and believe that they're going to deliver on them. That's a very different way of going home and feeling one way or another. And it's the same as buying a car and feeling great about it or feeling nervous about it. So in many relationships, it does take days, weeks, even a couple of months to get comfortable with each other and to make sure that relationship is as promised. If you think about it a slightly different way, there's industries. I like to look at the insurance industry, because this is a famous one for
retention.
The relationship with your insurance company really only starts when you have a claim, right? You pay them every month on time, and you basically aren't getting anything for it, right? You're just paying and paying and paying. And then you get into a car accident, and that's the moment where you're about to find out whether this is the right insurance company for you or not, right?
Yep.
Are they there for you? Do they have your back, or do they not? And so that
Right.
might be way past 100 days. But that's
Right.
going to be the moment of truth. So I do
Right.
think it differs. SipSmith had me immediately because we didn't need to grow into the relationship, right?
Yeah.
They provided something for me right up front,
Yeah.
and I was a fan.
Yeah.
You know, there's something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to highlight for our listeners. You talked about it's important that companies deliver on their promise. You know, so we may advertise that this is the best SaaS solution, or this is the best tie, or the best car, or whatever. And then there's what people are excited about recommending, like your example of going home and saying, baby, I just bought the best software that's going to get me promoted, or the reverse. 75, I remember reading a piece of research from your book, Dan, that said that 75% of people don't believe ads, but 90% of people believe recommendations from friends.
Yes.
So if our business is in the space of investing a whole lot of marketing spend in what do they call it in the Madison Avenue glossies to impress people with all the fancy stuff, when in truth and in fact, you'll get more bang for your buck earning loyalty and having those people do the work for you, just like Dan did the work for SipSmith. Because now I'm a Bombay Sapphire guy, but I'm going to be looking for SipSmith just because of this conversation.
So I have Bombay Sapphire in my bar as well. They're actually quite different from one another. We can talk about the details of that at a different time, but yes, I think you definitely should try it. So look, I still love marketing. I am a marketer at heart, but I'm a believer that companies spend way too much money on advertising and marketing and trying to bring in new customers as compared to the money that they spend trying to keep their existing customers. And so, and you know, different studies say, you know, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, whatever it is, but we're spending all this money to bring in new customers, and we're spending very little money to keep the ones that we have. And we've all seen the statistics that say that it is a lot cheaper to keep a customer than it is to acquire a new one.
Yep.
And yet we're not focusing on that. And I always look at an existing customer as, first of all, they're keeping the lights on. They're paying my salary. I should really like them. But also, if I do right by them, they're going to spend more with me. They're going to stay loyal for longer, and they're going to tell other people about me, which means that I actually can relax some of my sales goals because my customers are going to start doing some of the selling for me. And that's where it really becomes, where your ROI becomes really strong for CX. But if you're not focusing time and money on your existing customers, it's really hard to get them.
That's a great point. Something I wanted to dive in again into our C-Suite Bible. Two quotes I wanted to respond to and expand on. There's no such thing as an offline experience anymore. That's the first quote. And then design it so people would want to share the experience. You've kind of touched on that already, but let's dive into that. There's no such thing as an offline experience anymore, and why that's important.
Back in the day, an airplane was an offline experience because we didn't have Wi-Fi and we didn't have phones, and we got on an airplane, we put on our, you know, Walkman headset or whatever it was, and we listened to music and we just zoned out.
By the way,
today,
Richard, what a Walkman is. He's not there yet.
It's how you listen to music back in the day. But today, even airplanes are connected, right? And so you guys remember a few years ago, major airline dragged a man off of the plane, and that video went viral because everybody, you know, all it takes is one person pulling out their phone or their or whatever and taking a picture or a video. Now, most companies react to that with fear. and they say, oh, what if somebody did this? What if somebody took a picture? Or I hope they don't take a picture. And I always encourage companies to look at it exactly opposite, which is, how do we get people to take their phone out of their pockets and take a picture of this and tell other people about it? And if you ask that question, then you're going to start to design the kinds of experiences that people want to share. And that's really what it's about. So, things that used to be offline at any point can come online because everyone has a phone in their pocket. So you go to the dentist. Well, that feels like an offline experience. You're telling me that somebody at the dentist has never pulled out their phone to take a picture or video and share it? Of course they do. And so going to the dentist is an online experience too. This is the world we live in today. And so the smart organizations are figuring out where are those moments where we can get people to intentionally pull out their phone and take a picture. What you don't do,
give them a good reason to share. Yeah.
Yes. And what is not a good reason is just a sign that says, take a selfie here. Right. My friend likes to say, if you have to tell someone it's a selfie spot, it probably isn't, because selfies are supposed to be spontaneous. So what you want to do is create the selfie spot without telling people it's a selfie spot.
Right.
Okay. And it's very similar to, asking people to follow us on Instagram and tag us and use our hashtag and do all these things. It's like, people don't want that many instructions. They want to be authentic, and other people want to see authenticity. So we just have to let people be their authentic selves, but we can strategically insert into our experience places where we know people are going to be more apt to pull out their phones.
Right. Create intentionally the opportunities for people to engage, immerse themselves, and share, and give them good reasons to share, not negative reasons to share.
Exactly. And Roger, one other thing here. When we talk about sharing, this doesn't always have to be on social media. So, it's great if you can get a influencer into your retail shop that's got 2 million followers and, they post about you. Sure, that's great if you can make that happen. But sharing can be as simple as somebody taking a picture and sending it to their parents or to their kids or to a couple friends at work. Because this is still somebody talking positively about your brand, and they are spreading the gospel, so to speak. And so it can happen one person at a time. It doesn't have to happen millions at a time. Right. So, this idea of sharing, and sharing, by the way, doesn't also have to be digital. You think about, your typical cocktail party. People are standing in a circle and they're talking with each other, and they say, man, I just had a great experience yesterday at Sal's restaurant. Let me tell you about it. That's sharing. Right. And when people hear that, what do they want? To go to Sal's restaurant.
Yeah. Or sips gin.
Or sip gin, right?
That's awesome.
Keep plugging the sponsors, Roger. Keep plugging the potential sponsors.
I'm working here. I'm working. Okay, I'm working. Get the Experience Maker by Dan Gingiss. You don't want to miss this.
Exactly. Oh, speaking about the Experience Maker, you reference Wiser, that you can make companies wiser. Can you just break down a little bit of what that acronym stands for us and for our audience?
Absolutely. So the first part is being wise, and those are the 4 steps towards creating remarkable experiences. And then the last piece is the R, which makes you wiser than the competition. So WISE stands for witty, immersive, shareable, and extraordinary. Now, we've already touched on immersive and we've touched on shareable, so I'll quickly touch on witty and extraordinary. Witty is just about being clever, using language to your advantage, and refusing to be boring. It's not about being hilarious. You don't have to make people laugh, but you do have to make people smile. It's a big difference. There are some brands out there like Taco Bell and Wendy's. Follow them on social media. They are hilarious. They're going to make you laugh every day. But most companies aren't like that, and that's totally fine. But we can be clever. We can have fun with language, whether it's a physical sign or it's an invoice or a contract or an email or a social media post. Prospects or customers, you have the opportunity to show personality, to show that there's humans behind your brand, and people react really well to that. Extraordinary is just simply about being a little bit better than ordinary. And the good news is most of your competition is ordinary. And the best way to think about this is, how do I do just a little bit better than I'm doing now? And how do I specifically do something that no one else is doing? So very often, no matter what industry we're in, when we look for inspiration, we look to our competitors. That's the wrong place to look, because at most, what you're going to do is copy them. And
That's
then
right.
you're not going to be any different. So what I always teach is you
Right.
look for inspiration in other industries. So if you are in travel and hospitality, look to the banking industry, look to insurance, look to any place that doesn't feel like it's your industry, and look for
Mhm.
something that they're doing really cool, and then bring it back to your industry. And I find that this works everywhere. I did a speech once to librarians, and we talked about how to make the library more exciting. And I brought in lots of examples. And if you think about, I'm not going to draw it all out for you, but if you can think about the Sipsmith example, and you think about, okay, how do I apply that to a library? There's not going to be any alcohol in the library. So it's not about that, but it's about, how do I engage people and make them part of the process and
Right.
give them something that they want to share. So that
Mhm.
example can very much influence what a library might do. So
Mm.
that's being extraordinary. And then the R is about being responsive.
Understood.
Because after we're wise, after we create these experiences and get more people to talk about us, it's really important that we're part of the conversation. We want to be there to respond back to people. And that could be across any channel in which they are communicating with us. The most common, of course, is social media. And I am astounded at how many times you see people saying, I really love ABC Company,
Mhm.
and then ABC Company is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, crickets. Yep.
Right. Now, this person took time out of their day, used up their own social capital to tell their followers that they love this brand. The least the brand can do is say, hey, we love you
Acknowledge
back.
them.
Thanks for being a customer.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's about being responsive.
That's
Yeah.
that's awesome. So I have a couple more quotes, and then I'm sure we're going to run out of time. I always run out of time, Dan, and the time police call Richard always keeps me in line. So I'm going to try to be quick here. You touched on some of this already, but there's a concept I want to discuss briefly, and I want you to flesh it out for us because I think it's going to really resonate with business owners as well as C-suite. Um, there was there's in one of the how-to chapters, it talks about making sure that you capture feedback, the right type of feedback, um, so that you're aware of um, the customers who are for you and those who are against you, and then understanding the mix of those customers. Because without the data, you may have uh, 25, 30% of your customers who love what you do and are happy to do it. You may not know why, but you know that they're there. You may even know maybe 40, 50% of them aren't so happy or they're kind of meh about your product or service, and you may not know why. But it's in the feedback that you find out what the why is, and then the scope in terms of revenue impact of either the negative side of things or the positive side of things, which would guide which one prioritizes over the other. Kind of flesh that out for us if you don't mind. I think that's a really important discussion.
Sure. So customer feedback is incredibly important, as is employee feedback, by the way. So everything I'm about to say with customers can apply to employees.
Thank you for that.
There's a few things here. First of all, we've got to look at both the quantitative and the qualitative. So many companies measure customer satisfaction scores or NPS scores. Those are all fine to do, but they tell you how you're doing at a moment in time. They don't tell you why. And I've seen countless companies celebrate the fact that their NPS score is going up, or blame everything from the weather to COVID to
Sales.
politics to whatever when it's going down. But the
Uh-huh.
truth is, they don't have any idea. So
Right.
we have to merge the qualitative and the quantitative. The qualitative is the literal feedback, the words that customers use. And we can
Mhm.
capture this in lots of places. We can capture it in surveys. We can capture it in recordings of customer service conversations. We
Right.
can, or chat sessions. we can capture it from social media, but hearing the kind of meat behind it is so critical. I remember in a number of my jobs sitting with customer service agents in the call center and listening to calls, and there is nothing like hearing the actual voice of your customer. We talk about voice of the customer, but it's not usually their actual voice. When you hear that, you hear the emotions, you hear the frustration, you hear, whatever's going through their head. And I'm telling you, it is the most impactful thing. So that's one piece, is the qualitative versus the quantitative. The other piece is we talk about voice of the customer, which is VOC. I also like to talk about actions of the customer. This is what the customer is doing.
So thank you.
Oh, okay. We're going to go right into that. Good. This is what the customer is doing, which is often different than what they're saying.
That's right.
And so it's so important for you to capture what it is they're doing. A quick example, when I was at the credit card company, is we noticed that the vast majority of customers who were logging in to the website were first going to look at their transactions. They wanted to see the last couple of transactions that they had made. But at the time, it took 3 clicks to get to those transactions. And so that's frustrating. So we brought it, I challenged the team, we said, all right, how can we make it 2 clicks or 1 click? And I said, let's make it no clicks. And so we added what was like a Facebook feed to the homepage. So as soon as you log in, the first thing you see is a feed of your transactions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Overnight, it was unbelievable what we saw. Overnight, what started happening is tens of thousands of people were logging into the website and logging out and not clicking on anything. Now, if you're an e-commerce place, that stinks. But if you're a credit card company, what happens is your customer satisfaction scores go through the roof because you gave customers exactly what they wanted when they wanted it. And and nobody ever said, hey, will you please put the transactions on the homepage? But we looked at how they were using the website and we figured out how to deliver it to them better. The last thing I'll say is when we look at feedback, there's really 3 steps, and most companies do the first 2 and they forget about the third. I like to refer to this as CAT, if you happen to be a cat lover. The C is for collecting. Most companies do this pretty well. They're doing surveys, they're calculating NPS. Make sure you're collecting both quantitative and qualitative. The second step is analyzing. And again, you want to analyze voice of the customer and actions of the customer. Most companies do this pretty well as well. The problem is that the result of the analyze phase is usually a report. Let me tell you something. Your CEO does not need more reports. They've got plenty of reports on their desk. Don't put another one on there.
That's right.
Because a report doesn't do anything other than tell you what's going on. The last part of CAT is taking action. And so if we take action on the feedback that has now been properly analyzed, that's when we can affect change. And so if I just captured and analyzed data to figure out that my customers use the recent transactions feature the most, but I don't do anything about that, then what was the point of capturing it?
Right.
But truly, this is where most companies fall down because they feel like the end game is that report. Okay, we captured all the data and we told management about it. We're done. And that's missing the third step, which is probably the most important.
Most important step. That's absolutely correct, man. That is awesome. I love cat. And I'm allergic to cats right now. I'm starting to fall in love with cats again. I'm liking cats now. You touched on something I wanted to highlight again as well with regard to surveying customers and getting the voice of the customer versus the action of the customer. There's a popular piece of research done where Disney surveyed a lot of their patrons to see what would you want on the food menu, and the salads came up as a big thing. But what the customers actually did, they wanted things that were portable and easy to eat while going through the park. Salads don't fit. So the survey might say one thing, but that's why you want to capture qualitative and quantitative and pay close attention to actions. So any feedback you can get from customers is going to give you competencies in terms of anticipating their needs, and then intentionally designing an experience that gives you the outcome that you want, which is buying more, staying longer, and telling their friends. Agreed? Agreed,
Yes.
Dan? Yeah?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
That's exactly right. It kind of reminds me of what's always said about Steve Jobs and Apple, right? That, nobody ever said, I want an iPhone,
yeah,
right? And so there are definitely times where, innovation happens not because of customer feedback, but maybe even in spite of it. But you can bet that once the iPhone is out there, Apple takes feedback very seriously and listens to what works and what doesn't. And when people have problems, this is why the software keeps getting better and better and better, because they figure out ways that people are using it and they make it easier to use.
Yeah. So before you go, Roger knows me. My heart is for small businesses in the Caribbean. We're kind of like a rural economy at times. Some of these strategies and tactics are easily on the scalable side. But what advice would you give for maybe small businesses, Anytown USA, small town USA? How could they leverage their intimate knowledge of their communities to make CX something a part of their strategy?
good
Richard,
question.
you just answered your own question in the way I was going to answer it, which is when you are a small local business, your competitive advantage is that you know the community, that you're part of the community. So lean into that as hard as you can. Now, if you are attracting local community people, that's wonderful. You know them and they know you, and they're going to frequent your business because you are part of the community. If you are servicing tourists, then maybe this doesn't quite work the same way. But in that case, you follow what the wiser methodology and what you're really looking for there, because a tourist might come to your spot and never come again because they're just never visiting again. But what they can do is tell other people about it. And this is where ratings and reviews come into play. This is where, again, social media and making shareable experiences comes into play. So I do think that small businesses can do this just as well. And one of the things you will find in my book is that all of the examples that I share, almost all of them, 90%, are simple, practical, and inexpensive. And that is because I know how hard it is to get things done. I know how hard it is to find budget, especially for small businesses. So I want these examples to provide inspiration so that you can do them and spend almost no money. So think about a small business. Let's think about a typical small business that has one of those letter signs outside, right, of their
Yeah.
store, right, that you can change the words on. Well, there is a restaurant in Austin that's called El Arroyo. It's a Tex-Mex restaurant. If you follow El Arroyo on Instagram, you will never see pictures of their food. In fact, if you go to Yelp, you will see that their ratings of the food are only okay. No one goes to El Arroyo because it's the best Tex-Mex food around. The reason they go to El Arroyo is to see the sign, because every day they change that letter sign, and every day it is hilarious. And people drive from miles away to see the sign. They sell t-shirts with this sign. They have keychains. They have all that. You can walk
Wow.
into the store and buy all of this stuff related to a sign. And
That's
I need to
awesome.
remind people, this is a restaurant,
It's a
right?
restaurant. Right.
Now, does it cost them a lot of money to change the sign every day? I don't
No.
think it costs them any money. It might cost one employee a little bit of time, but it doesn't cost money. And yet it is a way that people, and of course, people that come to see the sign, what do? They go in and they eat.
Yeah.
So this stuff doesn't have, as Roger said before, it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be expensive. It's really about just allowing your employees to be creative, to have fun, to show the human side of your business. And I think small businesses have an absolute competitive advantage in that, because they do know the community so well, and because generally they are part of the community. And so, like I said, lean into that, and you're going to find the kinds of things that are going to work really well for your business.
Oh, thanks, Dan. You've given us a mini master class on CX, so very appreciative.
Yeah,
Roger?
this topic was supposed to be the benefits of a customer-centric culture, and we've gotten significantly more than that. Before we close, I wanna take a minute, Richard, to use a story I heard from Dan about his experience in Jamaica. Dan, you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, go ahead.
Because you asked about small business. I'm gonna ask Dan to tell the story in like 30 seconds if he can. Um, but in terms of small businesses and how they can take advantage of their agility. I don't want to use it in a project management term, but in their flexibility to maneuver. Dan, tell them about the experience you had.
Are you talking about Big Mama?
Big Mama, my
Yeah,
friend.
Big Mama. So when we were in Jamaica, my daughter wanted her hair braided. And there's lots of people that are offering this hair braiding service, right? It's not hard to find. But we were on the beach and we ran into this woman who introduced herself as Big Mama. And I would say, physically, she fit that description reasonably well. But she was the sweetest, nicest woman. She told us all about her kids. She had a daughter my daughter's age. She just brought my daughter in almost like, like a grandma. And it was so fun for my daughter to get her hair, not just to get her hair braided, but to get her hair braided by Big Mama. And I'm telling you, we still talk about Big Mama all the time because she just, all the hair braiders, and here's the one that stood out from us. And so she's not a big company. She doesn't have any employees. It's just Big Mama, and that's it. That's the whole company right there. And I think she did such an amazing job. And how did she do it? She was just herself. She just used her very bubbly personality and outgoing, personality to attract people in a very different way.
So before we close out, any final recommendations that you want to share, Dan, in 30 seconds or less for business owners, entrepreneurs, C-suite, or people who are trying to understand this customer experience beast?
Yes, I want each and every one of you to become a customer of your own business. This is so critical. We talk about being in the customer's shoes, but what we don't really think about is that the customer's perspective is exactly the opposite of ours. We're sitting behind our desk or we're sitting at the company level. We are looking out at the customer. The customer is looking in at us. It is the opposite perspective. If you are never literally standing in the same place that your customer is, you are not going to see your business through their eyes. So if you run a hotel, stay in your hotel for a night. If you have a restaurant, order everything off of the menu, even if you've tasted it all before. Walk in the front door of the building, not the back door where your office is, to make sure that you see what customers see. This is one of the easiest ways to find places to improve your experience.
Yeah, I would love to see Dan have a reality show called Undercover Customer.
I love it. I love it. Let's do it. And let's start in the Caribbean because I'd like to come down there.
Yeah,
in the winter.
Yeah, definitely.
He's been angling for that for a while now, Richard. Trust me, it's going to come up again.
Yeah, I think we have to extend the invitation this time. So yes, definitely come to the Virgin Islands, St. Croix. Nothing against St. Thomas, but the Big Island is better. So that's where we're based.
Awesome. That is great. Thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been really fun. I feel like we could do this for hours, so I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Gingiss, CEO of the Customer Experience, author of the Customer Experience, or sorry, the Experience Maker, rather. I'm speechless, and that doesn't happen very often, but I'm really grateful for you taking the time. I know you're very busy, so I look at this as an honor and a privilege. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience with our audience. Ladies and gentlemen, you have it from Dan Gingiss. Our next podcast, we're going to have the managing director of an incubator, and she's also an angel investor with large footprint in multiple countries. So you don't want to miss her perspective on the value of customer experience in new businesses that are getting ready to scale. All right, so stay tuned for that. Thank you so much. This is the IAM CX podcast. I am Roger Nicholas, Director of Customer Experience at International Analytics and Marketing. We have Richard Dorsey, our CEO, and we want to again thank Dan Gingiss of the Experience Maker. We appreciate you very much, Dan. God bless you, man. Take it easy.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, and Roger, we're not international yet. We're Island Analytics and Marketing, but we will be International Analytics and Marketing.
I'm all over the place right now. I'm just excited.
It's coming. It's coming. He's already looking in the future.
Yeah,
I love it.
That guy, yeah.